It's time. It's episode 41, ATM. Apologise to me. That's the podcast. I'm Martin Devlin from the platform. Mark Watson, international commentator, reporter, broadcaster of much reputation, joins us. Watto, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. It's a very generous and very nice, warm welcome.
Lots to talk about. Sky are advertising for professional players to commentate the NPC. The word broadcaster is not in that advertisement, and that is deliberate from Sky. NZR Plus we're going to talk about. Is this 10 years too late, a streaming service for New Zealand Rugby? The Warriors are just getting better and better and have overtaken this sporting market we call Auckland. That was obvious from what I saw at the pub on the weekend.
Apologise to me!
But we're going to start with Robbie Manson. And what an awkward situation this now is for Sport New Zealand, High Performance Sport New Zealand, and anyone that is pouring taxpayer funding into this guy, who has started an OnlyFans page. Now, we all know what OnlyFans is. It's a porn site, and Robbie can couch it in whatever language and for fluffy and floweriness that he wants to. And, you know, it doesn't have to be explicit porn, but, I mean, it's a porn site. That's what it is. What is your take on this? Because me, Watto, I'm sitting there saying, as an adult, he's welcome and free to do whatever the hell he wants. But when you're representing New Zealand as an athlete with a silver fern on your chest, is it appropriate?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one, Martin. I read this yesterday. Look, I'll be honest, mate, I'm not that familiar with the website. In fact, someone only told me about this sort of stuff a couple of weeks ago. I didn't actually realise it was even a thing. So this is behind a paid a paywall. So I think I read it was $14 or $15 a month, and then you can go on and view individuals and whatever and however way they want to present themselves, and how far they want to take things. Interesting one. We had the discussion, didn't we, last week around Ruby Tui and whether it was appropriate or not that she appears in Weet-Bix cards with the rainbow flag, and that New Zealand Rugby had the right to say no, we don't want our athletes using these types of things as a political platform. In the situation of rowing, probably slightly different. Not really sure they're paying the big salaries. Yes, these athletes will be benefiting from some high performance funding. Arguably, I'd say that the rowers, once they get to that level, probably deserve it. Look, I don't think they'll come down as hard on him. I think the fact that he is a gay man will allow him to probably have a little bit more leeway in this political environment, rightly or wrongly. Mm-hmm. I think if it was a heterosexual male, I think there would be a bigger outcry, and I think maybe more might be done about it. And so I think in this environment, he'll probably get away with it. I read his rationale behind it. I read what he was trying to do, and I've got to be honest, I thought he articulated it well. I won't be buying it, so I won't be able to determine whether or not he actually lives up to what he has said. Clearly wanting to try and earn some money. Is this the best way of doing it? And then you do have to think about those sponsors that sponsor Rowing New Zealand. As I've said previously with the Warriors, with rugby, companies come on board with certain sports because they believe that sport has a set of values which align with their values, and there is a natural synergy there, and there is some reach. Now, does Robbie Manson have a really, really big profile? Fastest ever in the single sculls. I think he did that in Poland some time back. Look, I mean, do what you want, I guess, to a degree, but yeah, you've got to look at it in terms of how sponsors will look at this. I think, again, because he's a gay man, he'll get away with this one. I don't think there'll be too much of a fuss on it.
Look, I think that as well, and I think that, really that raises all kinds of other questions, doesn't it? Because if it was a heterosexual man, say it was one of the All Blacks, let's just pick out an All Black and say an All Black started doing this. Would that be appropriate, and would New Zealand Rugby be happy about it? Would they let
No, they wouldn't.
No, they wouldn't.
No,
okay.
They wouldn't.
So
no,
because it's a gay man, I feel that no one will be prepared to put their hand up and say no, because for fear of some kind of anti-homophobic backlash or something, or they get accused of all of those kind of things. This is the wishy-washy place that we find ourselves in New Zealand at the moment, isn't it? That no one is actually prepared to say what the truth is. No one's prepared to actually articulate an opinion, just in case a few squealers and screamers on social media, start yelling and name calling and labelling. I don't think it's appropriate. I'll say that right now. I don't think it's appropriate because I just don't, if here's a guy, if he's representing us at the World Championships and it involves blazing headlines about porn star rowing, and that, which is what the media will do with it because that's clickbait crap and that's what the media's about. I don't want that connected to a silver fern. I just don't. I don't have any problem with Robbie Manson doing it. I don't have any problem with his sexuality. I don't have any problem with any of that. What I do feel weird about is the fact that if this becomes attached to a silver fern and a New Zealand representative team, then I don't think it's right.
No, and you're representing everybody in this country, are you? And that's why sometimes you have to stay apolitical, where you don't actually, it's not up to you really to necessarily put out your political views. And I think the same discussion around Rugby too, you're representing New Zealand, that is all of New Zealand. And of course, some people will agree with it, some people won't. So the best thing to do is stay neutral on all of it. But I'll keep coming back to this. He's a gay man. So nothing will be said for the fear of retribution or you're homophobic. But isn't it ironic? The catch here is that you want equality, you want equity. But not all the time. In fact, we'll use this to our advantage. We'll play on this one. I'm not sure that Robbie Manson's playing on the fact that he's a gay man and thinks somehow he's going to get away with it. But that's just the way it's naturally going to play out in the media. And there's a double standard there, isn't there? We want equity, we want equality. But we'll just turn a blind eye to this one.
Apologise to me!
Sky TV are advertising for past professional players who've recently given up their careers or might even still be playing to come along and have a crack at commentating NPC rugby. I don't have a problem with this either. What I do have a problem with is that they're not interested in any broadcasters or actually getting people up to that level. The reality is the presentation of our national game in this country is woeful. Out of all of the commentators and presenters that they use, I would say less than 30 or 40% of them are actually competent. And what I'm saying by that is actually broadcastable people that actually have something to say, can articulate it well, express their opinions, are engaging, are actually compulsive viewing themselves. So many of them stumble, fumble, bumble. They get no training from Sky TV at all, and they add nothing at all to the pictures, to the game, to the aftermatch, to the pre-match or anything like that. Why, as a viewer, as a subscriber to Sky, why are we getting this foisted upon ourselves and continually so, where no one is actually prepared to put their hand up and say, this isn't working. Look at the people you're putting on screen. You give them no training. I don't actually blame most of these past players, Mark, but I just know that Sky TV throw them in the deep end in a job that requires professional competence, and most of them that I'm watching don't have it.
I completely agree. And someone like me, I find it incredibly frustrating. I've, paid my dues big time to try and fulfill my childhood dream of becoming a commentator. It was a childhood dream, and I'm only feeling now after sort of 4 Olympic Games, a couple of Commonwealth Games, a World Games, and a whole lot of other events that I'm finally feeling like I'm comfortable in that role as a commentator, whether it be as a lead commentator, in some situations as an expert commentator. You try and get opportunities and the door just seems to be closed. And I just put it down to this woke environment which we live in. This identity politics. There doesn't seem to be a lot of quality control with Sky. We've already talked, Martin, that rugby's already struggling. The product itself is struggling, and I always look at commentary like this, and I think this is the role of a good commentator. You look at the product, whatever it is, and that is ultimately the masterpiece. How do you enhance the masterpiece? Well, you put it in the right frame and you put it under the right light. And that's the job of the commentator. You're the frame, you're the light. You're there to sort of further enhance it. And when the product's already struggling, the last thing you want to do is go and put it in some cheap, tacky warehouse frame. And that's pretty much what they're doing at the moment. And it's not just about, are you a former player? I guarantee within that, they will break it down even further. And you'll then have to fall into certain categories in regards to gender, potentially race as well, which you hope's not the case, but I think we are seeing a lot more deliberate equity. And again, I don't have a problem with every single commentator being Māori, every single commentator being Pacific, every single commentator being female, every single commentator being European, as long as you're good at it. You owe it to your subscribers. What you're trying to do is get a high level of engagement. The more eyes that watch a rugby game, the higher the advertising rates. So you then go and say, we've got 80,000 people watching this NPC game. You can go to Mitre 10 and say, hey, Mitre 10, hey, this is how much we now value a 30-second commercial at. Or you can put crap commentators on a crap product, have a viewing audience of 5,000, go back to Mitre 10 and go, oh, by the way, this is what it's worth. And I guarantee there is a big difference in terms of advertising rates for a product that's got 5,000 people watching it and advertising rates that have got 80,000 people watching it. And what they've actually got to realize is, are they going to increase their revenue by trying to get more subscribers, increasing prices? Not really, not when you look at inflation that runs alongside of it. How Sky can increase revenue is actually gained through advertising, and through advertising of products that are high level of engagement. And they just don't seem to get that. They're not interested in that. They're more interested in a headline. And as I've said previously, I think they're actually at times just a political platform for identity politics. And it's not a good business model, Mark.
Apologise to me!
Not a good business model, NZR Plus. And I say that because, look, I applaud New Zealand Rugby for finally, catching public transport when it's been around for the last 100 years and jumping on a streaming service. They were offered a half share in Rugby Plus 10 years ago, and Steve Tew and Brent Impey turned this down. They had no idea what they were actually looking at. They were arrogant about it. They were totally complacent. If they'd actually invested in that, which sold eventually to Sky for 68 million New Zealand dollars and has gone as part of the World Cup package, now World Rugby own it, they would be the largest streaming provider of rugby in the world, New Zealand Rugby. Imagine the revenue stream that they would be getting every year if they'd actually just done what they should have done 10 years ago. Is this a little too late for them, NZR Plus?
I don't think they've got any choice. It's probably too late. I think, you look at the opportunity cost you talked about. That doesn't really surprise me with Steve Tew. I mean, I've never been a fan. Those guys thought they knew everything. And
well, they thought they did.
Problem.
That's right.
But that's the part of the problem of where the game's at now, and this administration's cleaning up this mess or further enhancing this mess. Look, I think going back to our previous point regarding Sky Television, I mean, you just sense their days are numbered, aren't they? It's only a matter of time before a different model comes along where they've got greater control. Now, whether they do it themselves, whether they go to an online platform such as Amazon. It's interesting. I for some reason resubscribed to Amazon the other day, and I saw on there Major League Soccer. They've got all the rights to Major League Soccer, and immediately I saw that. I thought, well, look, it's only a matter of time before the All Blacks, before rugby goes that way, and people like Sky Television can't compete. Yeah, look, they've certainly missed a beat, haven't they? I mean, it's easy after the fact. You're sitting there and you've got to weigh it all up, and you've got to take some risks. And again, you don't necessarily understand what Rugby Pass was. And clearly, as you've just alluded to, it was a missed opportunity. I don't think they've got a choice here. I think it's the way it's going. I think they'll be looking at models around the world here. And again, this is where, if you're Sky Television, you're going to be deeply, deeply concerned, aren't you? And sort of, again, segueing to what we've discussed in previous weeks, this is why I just can't understand why Sky are just such a PR firm for New Zealand Rugby, somehow believing that by being a PR firm that the New Zealand Rugby is going to remain loyal to them. It's not the case. New Zealand Rugby, like New Zealand cricket, are going to go where
they'll sell to the highest bidder, mate. They'll sell to the highest bidder.
They're
going to sell to the highest bidder. That's all it is, and we already know that's happening.
Apologise to me!
The Warriors, I was at a pub on Friday night. I was talking about this yesterday on air a lot, I must admit, so I won't spend too much time regurging all of that. But I was at a pub less than a K away from Eden Park where there was hardly a crowd, and I think 10 to 12,000. They say 15,000. I mean, they're probably counting all the season ticket holders that didn't turn up. There was a pub full of people that roared when the Warriors came on at 8 o'clock and only one screen stayed on the Blues. This town is now a Warriors town. So you said it last week, polish up the pom-poms, reshave the legs. You and me are outside SJ's house again, mate. The man is a master, and the Warriors are the hottest ticket in Auckland right now.
Yeah, look, they are. They are. It's interesting. I was talking to a gentleman today, Tim, who took his kids along to a Warriors game a couple of weeks ago and said it was just incredible atmosphere, 24,000. Then went to Eden Park on Friday night and just said it was just a complete contrast. Now, I didn't prompt that. I didn't try and solicit that information out of him. He was just telling me. He actually brought it up. And it just highlighted. And again, more of a traditional rugby guy, went through Auckland Grammar School, but now just right in the NRL camp. And look at it. I mean, look, that performance from the Warriors was probably the best performance I've seen from a Warriors team, and I don't know, since they made the grand final back in 2011. I think we've got to be careful that we don't just put it all on Sean Johnson. I mean, you've got some players that are playing brilliantly, the likes of Wade Egan, and you've got Metcalf. I mean,
Tohu Harris is a beast, isn't he?
I mean, you have a look at that.
I mean, there's so many of them.
That try that he scored. That
was magic. Magic, mate.
And so I think it's not just Sean Johnson; it's everybody here. And again, and interesting that I know in an interview yesterday, Stacey Jones gave on SENZ. He said, "Look, part of the reason why Sean has been so good is that he's got some confidence defensively. He's making some tackles, and so the fact that he's not afraid now to get up and make tackles has actually given him the confidence to go to the line, not be afraid to be taken in a tackle either." And I know that Stacey's done a lot of work with him this year, and and I think that's Stacey's role within that team. I think some people, they're just not cut out to be head coaches, but they're very good in those situations. And look, this machine that is the NRL just continues to roll on. It's not just the Warriors that are getting big crowds. I mean, look at that sellout there in Canberra and
Brisbane. I watched the Brisbane Newcastle game. Same again, mate.
And Brisbane, and then we have a quarterfinal for the Blues at Eden Park against the Waratahs, and you'd be lucky if you had 7,000 or 8,000 in the stadium. You'd like to think that both semi-finals this week are going to be sold out, but look, you've got to wait. What we've said it before, we've had 15 rounds, we've had a quarterfinal, and I think we've had 2 sellouts throughout the entire Super Rugby season, and one of those is a stadium that holds 17,000. And again, New Zealand Rugby, their partners, they've just, you've got to start listening. As I say, Martin, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. He wasn't stupid.
Apologise to me!
Finally then, let's celebrate excellence over the weekend. Just quickly, Manchester City doing it so easy. And in the end, there is no other team in Europe competing with this lot at the moment. There has to be, not an asterisk beside it, but it must be made mention that they diddled their way out of the fair play allegations and conviction from a couple of years ago, where they were banned from the Champions League for 2 years. That got overturned on appeal to a year. It goes to the Court of Arbitration in Sport, and a technicality, and lawyers get them off that. Well, without that Saudi money, without all of that, they wouldn't be in this position. But regardless of that, Pep has coached this team to play brilliant football, and they've just cleaned up Europe, cleaned up the Premier League, won the FA Cup. And then you've got Novak as well, the old master at 36, who's won 11 Grand Slams since the age of 30. I love my tennis, mate, and I don't know whether I've seen a better player play tennis. So I'm not old enough to remember Rod Laver, but just the way this guy hits the ball, moves around the court, he can play on any surface. He destroys his opponents physically, he destroys them mentally, he crushes them emotionally. We are in the presence of greatness, and I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it, with Djokovic? There are still a lot of people out there that want to be the greatest to be Roger Federer, or want the greatest to be Rafael Nadal, because they endeared themselves to the public. You cannot have 3 heroes. You've got to have a villain in there somewhere. That is life. That is just the way things go. And for whatever reason, Djokovic has probably become the villain in the eyes of a lot of people. And in some sports, you can try and say, well, hang on a minute. He might have won more Grand Slams, but I still believe this player is better. You see it in golf. Is Tiger Woods a better player than Jack Nicklaus? I think he is. Even though Nicklaus won 18, I still think Tiger's the greatest player that's ever played the game. And I think you can put some arguments for the eras, the depth, and all the rest of it. But you can't do that with these 3, because they all played in the same era. They've all played against each other. They've all played the same number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 seeds, and all the same players they've had to come up against. And so whether you like it or not, you actually have to say Djokovic is, without doubt, the greatest tennis player that's ever played the game, and he can potentially go on and win more. Look, I think Roger Federer was probably the catalyst for changing the game, and is part of the reason why Nadal and Djokovic are as good as they are, or why they had to become as good as they became, because this guy just took it to another level. But when it's all said and done, and sometimes, Martin, I've said this before, you need 10, you need 15 years, don't you, to really sit back and reflect. But yeah, Djokovic, the greatest tennis player that's ever played the game, in just a wonderful era for tennis. And, I reckon tennis must be concerned, because let's be honest, we're 2-3 years away, aren't we? And Djokovic will be gone, sounding like Nadal will be gone by the end of next year. And who's left? And then again, on the women's side, I mean, I can't even really tell you who's winning these major Grand Slams on the women's side, because we just haven't had anybody really consistently since the Williams sisters, have we?
Devlin.
Words matter.
I was going to excuse me.
The platform.